Good evening. I'll just take a glass. Two disclosures. I'm not a robot. And this speech is not prepared by ChatGPT. It's indeed a deep honor to be asked to deliver a lecture in the memory of the journalist doyen, Shri Verghese. I think it's even more a pleasure to be there to celebrate young journalists in India today, where we're giving them awards in the names of three very courageous journalists, Chamili Diviji, Kamla Mankaikarji, and Vishwanathji. I've divided up my speech into beginning with the prologue and then analyzing what we get from the prologue. In July 2024, Reporters Without Borders, and I'll use the acronym RSF because it's a French name, published its annual report on the World Press Freedom Index. Of the 180 countries surveyed, India's rank was 159 for 2024, which was an improvement by 2 ranks from the previous year, 2023. It is believed that this improvement in the rank was because some of the other countries had done so badly, their ranking had plummeted. This report is published annually by the RSF since 2002. It is based on certain parameters which does not include the quality of journalism or human rights violations in general. A country's performance is evaluated on 5 distinct categories: political context, legal framework, economic context, social cultural context, and safety. India's performance has been consistently wanting. Its WPF rank, which was 140 in 2019, sunk to 161 in 2023. Its score in 2024 was 31.28, placing it in the very severe category as far as deprivation of press freedom is concerned. Basically, bad news. But then even worldwide, as RSF noted, there was a discernible lack of political will to protect journalists. The RSF further pointed out that notwithstanding the UN Security Resolution 2222, which urges member states to create and maintain in law and in practice safe and enabling environment for journalists, and without undue interference in situations of armed conflict, the Israeli security forces have, since October 2023, when the conflict with Palestine commenced, they've killed more than 100 reporters and 22 in the course of their work. Here, in the monsoon session of Parliament, in July 2024, an opposition member of Parliament raised an unstarred question whether the Union Information and Broadcasting Minister was aware of India's poor WPF index rank. Ashwini Vaishnaw's response was disappointing. He began with discrediting the RSF, saying that it had evaluated press freedom using a very low sample size with little or no understanding of India and its vibrant democracy. According to him, RSF as well as its methodology were questionable and not reliable. Vaishnaw proclaimed in Parliament that India has a robust and flourishing press. He cited the increase in registered newspapers from 2023 to 2024, an increase in the private satellite channels from 821 in 2023 to 919 in 2024. When I read what the INB minister had said, I got curious. Although his response was in keeping with the government's reaction to reports of other international bodies that paint an unflattering picture of our country, and here I mean the HDI report, the Social Progress Report, the World Hunger Report, I said I should give him the benefit of doubt. Maybe we do have a robust and flourishing press. Maybe the RSF got it all wrong. I picked up one of the parameters mentioned. Is there a barrier to the free flow of information on the internet? 5th August 2019, the date on which the Parliament abrogated Article 370, was acclaimed as a historic moment for our country. It was also the date from which a complete internet shutdown was ordered throughout the territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, which became union territories. This, among many other things, meant that the press there could not effectively function. Anuradha Bhasin, the editor of Kashmir Times, a leading local newspaper, petitioned the Supreme Court of India in a writ petition questioning the legality of the measure. She was joined by others, including Ghulam Nabi Azad, a leading politician in the region. The question was whether the powers of the government under the Temporary Suspension of Telecom Services, Public Emergency or Public Service Rules 2017, I will refer to them as the suspension rules, notified under the Telegraph Act, were properly exercised, or whether they were, in terms of Subarticle 2, 19 Subarticle 2 of the Constitution, an unreasonable restriction on the freedom of the press under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. Secondly, was the state obliged to place the orders of internet shutdown in the public domain, and were they amenable to judicial review? Thirdly, could there be a blanket order under Section 144 CRPC to ban gatherings anywhere throughout the territory of J&K and Ladakh? In what appeared at first blush to be a progressive judgment handed down on 10th January 2020 in Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India, the Supreme Court answered the second set of questions in the affirmative. It recapitulated the settled legal position that the freedom of the press is a requirement in any democratic society, without which there cannot be transfer of information or requisite discussion. It held that the right to free speech and to carry on one's trade and profession on the internet were constitutionally protected under Articles 19(1)(a) and 19(1)(g) of the Constitution. The order under the suspension rules and under Section 144 CRPC were required to be made public and would be amenable to judicial review. So far, so good. The question whether the internet shutdown orders were disproportionate and had a chilling effect on the freedom of speech was left open, since the court was directing the review committee constituted under the suspension rules to conduct a periodic weekly review to examine the necessity to continue the restrictions. On the third aspect, the Supreme Court held that the power under Section 144 CRPC cannot be used to suppress legitimate expression of opinion or exercise of democratic rights, that such orders would be amenable to judicial review, and that repetitive orders under Section 144 CRPC would be an abuse of power and such. Thus, no real immediate relief was given to the petitioners. 4 months later, in May 2020, the Foundation for Media Professionals, FMP, again approached the Supreme Court stating that none of its directions in Anuradha Bhasin had been obeyed by the government. This time, the court was lukewarm in its response. The list placed before it by the Solicitor General of the terrorist attacks that had taken place in J&K since 5th August 2019 seemed to weigh heavily with the court. It merely asked a review committee to examine whether the internet shutdown orders were required to be continued. No one was hauled up for contempt of court. Even 3 years later, when a fresh application was filed by FMP complaining of non-compliance, the court refused to entertain it. It appeared to be an instance of judicial abdication. The court was reluctant to implement its own orders. Internet shutdown orders are now almost routinely issued throughout the country. Farmers' protests, Manipur violence, and even during exams. These orders are not in the public domain and so remain inaccessible and unchallenged. India, Iran, Myanmar, and Ukraine are among the countries with the highest number of internet shutdowns in 2022 and 2023. According to an Access Now report, 2024 saw 294 internet shutdowns globally, and India accounted for 84 of them at 28%. Clearly, the RSF report cannot be dismissed as being unreliable or based on a questionable methodology.